Hi yogis, it's Lizzie Hoffman and I'm so happy to see you here. Today this little tutorial is going to be about modifications for Chaturanga, Up Dog and Down Dog. And those three things are usually what they call in a class Vinyasa, right? You'll hear the teacher say Vinyasa and people will just shoot back into a Chaturanga like Pavlov's dogs. But there is sometimes an issue with that for some people, right? They can't do it complete Chaturanga, up dog or down dog, or one or the other, and it doesn't feel very good for them. That's the last thing that I want for you. I don't want you ever to get hurt in yoga. It should never happen. And so this tutorial will help you guide yourself through some modifications if you'd like to take them, right? And also understand, if you understand the teachings of Krishnamacharya, you know, Gary Kraftal, one of my teachers, is really famous for saying that Krishnamacharya used to say that Vinyasas or Chaturanga Up Dog, Down Dog were really made for the Saturn age, which is about up to 25, 30 years old. And if you're older than that, sometimes we have issues with our shoulders and our neck and our chest and our back and our hips. And no, these things are really child's play. So please, yogis, please, 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 don't get discouraged because this seems very difficult for you. It's child's play, right? It's made for really for children and for teens and for young adults. But those that have been doing it for a very long time, we still have the stamina, right? So it's challenging. And I want to help you through the challenge, okay? So let's get started. I'm going to come onto my mat onto all fours. So I have blocks in front of me, yogis. If you need a block, grab them. If you don't have blocks, maybe get two books that are the same, grab them, right? So I'm going to start off on all fours. And one of the issues that people have in Chaturanga or Down Dog or even Up Dog are their wrists. Yes, and I talk a lot about wrists and your hand placement. Understand, yogis, that our natural human anatomy is not allowing for 99.9% of the population to go at a 90-degree angle. This is crazy for a lot of people. For most people, we only go 60 to 70-degree angle. But in most yoga poses, it's asking you to come at a 90-degree angle. And so you want to be very mindful of that, because what happens too is that we displace the weight in our hands and then we get injured in the wrists, we get injured in the carpals, we get injured in the ulnar or the radius and the radial joint and the ulnar joint, and it just doesn't feel good. And then the pain rides all the way up to your neck and you're like, yoga's not for me, right? Again, last thing I want you to enjoy your yoga practice. So make sure, yogis, that when we place our hands on the ground, that we're placing the index finger mound and the thumb into the floor and pressing the fingertips into the ground and the finger pads. So it's kind of like a suction cup, yeah? And so what I want to do really is tone the forearm by pressing into the intrinsic muscles of my hand, making kind of like a glove or a gripping motion onto the floor. It's very important that we don't dump into the wrists, yogis, and I could understand that it could hurt you. If you have wrist issues to begin with or arthritis, I want you to take your blocks, right? And this might help you. And place your thumbs on the inside of the block, right? So that you can press your index finger into the ground, right? So try that, and then you could feel that the forearms start to engage instead of dumping into the forearms because it hurts so much, right? Again, yogis, we're going to go over some more issues, modifications for wrist, but this is the first one that I do want to show you. So my thumb is inside the blocks, right? And I could come a little further away if that 90-degree angle is just not really great for me. And then just, you could start your cat-cows here. This is a perfect modification right here for Chaturanga, Up Dog, and Down Dog. While everyone is doing Chaturanga, Up Dog, Down Dog, you do cat-cow. Finding a nice neutral spine. If down dog is appropriate for you, then you tuck your toes underneath you and then you just lift your hips up into this upside down V shape. Now, some of us might not ever get our heels to the ground, and I'll show that to you. Maybe you want to bend the knees. Maybe you want to bring your feet in a little closer. This is fine, yogis. It's also good. It's what you need to do to get into the shape, right? So, still pressing the index finger of the mound of my hand down into the floor. My thumbs are inside the block. I feel no pressure on my radiocarpal joint, and I can feel the tone in the forearm, right? So I'm getting the benefits of downward dog here. Right? And even if I did need to lift my heels, I could still do that. Your heels do not need to get to the ground. The intention is what matters. Okay? So that's a place that we can go into. If, yogis, you are not getting your hands on the ground at all, if you have a really intense arthritis of the wrist or any kind of any parts of your fingers, and your hands are just not in a mobile state, we could always place our hands, and I'll show it to you in the front first. I'm a little afraid because I don't want the blocks to slide. Your forearms, right? And you could place 2 blocks in front of them like this so that your hands can rest on top of them. And we can still do cat-cow. And then meet in a tabletop position. Yes? Does that make sense? So these poses are optional. I could still do every single pose on my blocks, on all fours. I could even use a wedge underneath my wrists if I needed to do that. Okay? So there are some people that do this with their wrists. You know, I'm not really a big fan of that. I'm not a fan of doing things like this if you don't understand how to do that. It could damage a little bit of the radiocarpal joint if you're not used to the strength, if you don't have strength in the forearm. I would rather in the beginning, if you are a beginning student, to use blocks underneath your hands. Maybe let the thumb release. Okay? Okay. So let's keep on going a little bit more. So we find ourselves, if it's possible for you, yogis, to keep your hands on the ground, right? You want to start to test that a little bit. Here's a nice warm-up for your hands or your wrist. Just shifting back and forth. And then just start to grab the ground with your hands. Good. Right? And we have all these exercises we could do for wrist warm-up as well. Right? We can just come onto all fours. That was enough warm-up. That's enough for you. If you can, bring your fingertips towards you and then spin your hands around. And then again, press away from the ground. Don't dump into your wrist. This is a really common stretch for the wrist. This is difficult for some people. They need to stay up. But the more you go back, the more you start to open up the wrist, right? So this might not be appropriate for you. And then come back, maybe bringing the heels of the hands towards each other, fingers facing out towards the sides of your mat, and just shifting side to side. And then placing the backs of your hands on the ground, fingertips facing each other. So my elbows are extended in this moment, and I'm pressing the backs of my hands into the floor. And then I want to still press the backs of my hands into the floor as I bend my elbows down and then extend the elbows, and then flex the elbows, and then extend. So there's a lot of wrist movement here. I'm warming up the wrist. You know, the wrists don't get a lot of action, and we dump into the wrist and we put a lot of pressure on the wrist. They're not made to withstand the stress that we put under them. And then just shake them out. Yeah? So take your hands, your index finger and your thumb of your left hand, and wrap it around your right wrist, and then press your fingers up towards the ceiling like you're putting on a glove. And then shake it out. And let's do the other side. So I'm wrapping my right index finger and my thumb around my wrist. I'm pulling down towards my elbows as my fingers go up towards the ceiling. Good. And then just shake them out. Shake them out, yogis. Do a little figure eights. Yeah, so this pose in yoga, I'm going to face you. This pose in yoga is called Badangulyasana, bound limbs. Yeah, so this is like a basket grip for some of us. This is also great for your hands, just to squeeze and then release, squeeze and release. Yeah, our hands take a beating in a vinyasa practice, yogis, and I want you to just take care of them. Good. So press your hands towards the front, whatever that is, and start to feel the stretch. It's not only in your shoulders, but we're also feeling it in the fingers and the wrists. And take a breath. You're doing great. And then release that. Okay? Good. So let's get back to these three poses that are maybe challenging to some. So here is tabletop. When we come down into our first chaturanga, this is a modified version of it. I do like for you guys to lower yourself down. So when I lower myself down, I'm going to teach it to you on your knees first. You lift up in the belly and press the floor away from you, and then lift your chin. And then gently start to lower yourself eccentrically down to the mat. And so your chin, chest, knees are on the ground, right? So this is like a kind of a cricket pose, right? And then you're going to extend your legs out to the ends of your mat. Your elbows are facing the ceiling, and your fingertips are right underneath the caps of your deltoids. You're going to press your feet, your hips, and your hands down into the ground as elbows come into the side. With your eye gaze, yogis, lift your head up. With your eyes help you. Your eyes are not lifting your head, but you're going to lift your chest up because you're going to go towards the vision where your eyes are taking you. Elbows to the side for cobra. And then lower back down. Press feet, hips, hands down, yogis. Inhale for cobra. Only come up to the height of your belly button. Elbows come into the side. Press chest, look up. Take another breath. And then lower down. Make sure that your feet are grounded into the floor. We're going to do that one more time. Inhale, come up. And then lower down. Tuck your toes underneath you. And press yourself back to your heels. And just find Vajrasana. Squeezing knees together, lift up in the pelvic floor, squeeze your belly, starting to engage these bandhas, right? So we're going to come back to all fours, yogis. Lift your chin, lower yourself down eccentrically. Extend the legs behind you. Inhale for cobra. Lower back down. Tuck your toes underneath you. Press yourself back to your heels. And then from this moment, nice long Adho Mukha Virasana, we're going to press our hands into the floor and lift our hips up and find that down dog. Remember, you could keep your knees slightly bent if you need to. You could bring your feet in. Yes, there's some of us that our elbows will bend. I want you to try to make your arms and legs as straight as possible. If that's not possible, release the valves.
by bending your knees slightly. So, downward dog, index fingers pressing into the floor, making a L shape with your index finger and thumb. Fingertips and finger pads are grounding into the floor, lifting up out of the wrist and toning the forearms. Feeling the stretch underneath your armpit and the serratus anterior. Really stretching and feeling the length in the back of the body, lifting up in the belly button and squeezing the pelvic floor up. Engage your quadriceps, yogis, and let the energy run down towards the heels, towards the ground. Good, yogis. And then just take a moment, lift the heels, and then bring your knees back down to the floor. Take a breath. So if all of that was very, very difficult for you, we're going to try this. We're going to come onto all fours, and we're just going to do cat-cow. Inhale, lengthen. Then tuck the chin in towards the chest and find this flexion of the spine. Then find a nice neutral spine. Tuck your toes underneath you and lift your hips up for down dog. So if you can, yogis, yes, we're going to take another round, but that was a modification if if Chaturanga and Cobra were not accessible to you. All right? So we're going to try another variation. We're going to come onto all fours, and I'm going to press myself up into a down dog. I'm going to just look in between my hands, and I'm going to walk to the front or where my hands are. If I need to bend my knees, I'm bending my knees as much as I need to. I'm going to roll forward towards the balls of my feet. Inhale, come up halfway. Maybe hands come to the shins. Ardha Uttanasana, lifting up in the belly. Try to lengthen the spine as much as possible. Exhale, we're going to fold forward. This is called Uttanasana. Ground your feet into the floor, yogis. As we root to rise, coming up to standing, palms will come up over your head. They touch. Hands touch. Hands come to heart center. Press hips forward. Engage quadriceps. Lift up in the pelvic floor. Relax your shoulders. Hands down by your sides for Samastitihi. So stand well. Feet are grounded into the floor. Insteps are lifted. Engage your quads. Press your hips forward. Lift up through the pelvic floor. Squeeze the lower belly towards the midline. Lift up out of the waist spine. Relax the shoulders down. Good. Inhale. Arms come up over the head. Yogis, palms touch. If that was hard for you, yogis, all you need to do is bring your hands to heart center. Choose arms to center or hands over your head. This is Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, we're going to fold forward. You could bend the knees coming forward. Inhale, come up halfway. Look forward. Good. Now, plant your palms on the mat. Bend the knees as much as you need to. Lift your chin and step your right foot back. And then step your left foot back. And here we find a plank position. Lift the chin. Don't tuck the chin in towards the chest. Now press away from the ground. And everyone bend the knees to the floor. And just like we did before, lower yourself eccentrically down to the mat. And then you're prone. Hands towards your deltoids, right underneath. Inhale, press feet, hips, hands down. Come into Bhujangasana or Cobra, elbows close. And then lower back down. Tuck your toes underneath you. Press yourself back to child's pose. And then lift your hips up to down dog. Look in between your hands, yogis, and take a walk to the front of your mat. Lengthen the spine on the inhale. So come up halfway. You could place your hands on your shins. You could even place your hands on blocks, yogis, here for the whole duration if you needed your blocks. And exhale, fold. Then root to rise. Come all the way up to standing. Remember, hands could be to heart center if your shoulders are bothering you. Hands to heart to Samastitihi. Inhale, arms up. So here's a third variation we can take. Exhale, fold. Inhale, half lift. Now plant your palms, yogis, and walk your feet back to your plank. You have to shift your weight forward so your shoulders are over your elbows and elbows over the wrists. Lift your chin. If it's possible for you, come halfway down. This is Chaturanga Dandasana. Pull your heart through for Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. Exhale, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Take a breath here, yogis. So let's go over that Chaturanga Dandasana. I'm going to place these blocks here, yogis. So if there's some of you that need to do the whole vinyasa with blocks, this is what it would look like, right? So as I press myself back into the plank, I'm going to shift my weight forward. I lower myself halfway down. Now, I don't want to go below my shoulder line. Then I pull my heart through. I press away from the ground and I look up. If that's not possible, you look forward. But your thighs are up off of the ground. Only your hands and your feet are on the ground. And then tuck chin towards chest slightly and then press yourself up to that down dog. Using the blocks is very helpful in those poses. It brings the floor closer to you. And take a moment. Remember this down dog, yogis. You're pressing your sits bones up to the sky and trying to straighten your legs as much as possible and straighten your arms as much as possible. So I don't want you to dump into this pose, especially if you're loosey-goosey, right? If you're loosey-goosey, you really want to lift up and really wrap all the muscles around the bone. And that's what we want to do in yoga anyway. We always want to wrap the muscles around the bone to protect the joints. So let's do one more variation. We're going to walk up to the front of the mat. And I'm going to lose the blocks. Inhale, half lift. Exhale, fold. Root to rise. Finding your Urdhva Hastasana. Palms touch, hands to heart. Samastitihi. So inhale, arms up, yogis. Really grab the air. Press hips forward. Press palms together. Root to rise. Engage your legs. Engage your bandhas. Exhale, fold forward. Rocking forward towards the balls of the feet, engaging your quadriceps. Inhale, half lift. Now, for this chaturanga, if you choose to jump back, yogis, you need to bend your elbows simultaneously when you jump. Do not jump with straight arms. It's too jarring for your joints. So, if we're going to jump, it's on the exhale. As we plant the palms down, exhale, elbows bend. Pull heart through. Inhale, up dog. Exhale, down dog. Take a couple more breaths, yogis. At any time, yogis, we could always come down to our knees and come into tabletop and do any of those variations that we talked about. Instead of Chaturanga. We can do cat-cow, right? Instead of up dog, do cat-cow. Finding a nice neutral spine. And even if you didn't want to do down dog, you could stay here and then just meet everybody when they do their Chaturanga Up Dog, down dog. Yes? So yogis, I hope that helped you a little bit. So there's so many options that we can take. You do not have to do the vinyasa if it's too much for you. Down dog, up dog, chaturanga dandasana, it could be contraindicated for your neck and your shoulders. If you are that person, don't do it. There's so much more benefit that we can get from our yoga practice without having to force ourselves to go into a vinyasa, right? Chaturanga, up dog, down dog. So I hope I gave you enough options to help you through and navigate to your own practice. Yeah? It's my pleasure always to help you and work with you. I am in your service. Sat Nam and Namaste.